My name is Colleen Welsh. I am a music producer slash YouTuber slash comedian slash freelancing coach. And the Freelance Writer's Guide is one of my many endeavors. The Freelance Writer's Guide is a coaching business that teaches people how to set up, launch, and run their own freelance copywriting business. So basically taking your skill and your love of writing and monetizing it.
Okay. So two things, a quick endorsement of the Freelance Writer's Guide. I had been freelancing for over 10 years and doing copywriting. I had the skill of copywriting, but I hadn't billed myself as a copywriter. So I was like project manager, human that will do anything you say for hire. And And I really wanted some organization. I needed templates. I needed someone to do the operational thinking for me when I decided I wanted to focus on copywriting, because I had done it, but I felt insecure about it a little bit, or had never sold just that. And I'm so happy that you're the only course I think ever that I've purchased. I've definitely paid for coaching from people and for various things, but I think this was the only course I've ever participated in that I've paid for. Anyway.
Wow, I feel so honored.
Well, it's because I watch your YouTube videos and I was like, she's correct. I don't know how to explain it. I just was like, yeah, she knows what she's talking about. And she's a genuine person. That's the feeling I got, So I purchased it, and it was a great decision. It completely streamlined everything. And I had previously mostly worked on Upwork before purchasing the course. So I didn't have the contracts. I didn't have a lot of that process built out. And it was really nice to just have it, use it, and I could start running. And then I was really excited the first time I sent somebody a contract. Yeah. Anyway. So big endorsement.
Well, thank you for saying that. And that was really what I was aiming for with my course, Freelance Writer's Guide to the Galaxy. It's a business course for people who want to freelance, because I wanted to freelance for years and I was so overwhelmed. I was like, do I need an LLC? How do I make a portfolio? How do people pay me? How do I get clients? So that's what that is all about, because once you have a system for it, it's really not that hard, It's you just need someone to gather all the information together and just be this is how to do it step by step.
Yeah. And
I really hate educational resources that just tell you a bunch of stuff, but they're not this is the order to do it in. So that was one thing I really want to incorporate into my course.
Yeah. And I was excited because it wasn't an overemphasis on mindset. Mindset stuff is definitely there. I definitely feel emotionally capable. But I was really do you have the form that I can copy and put my logo on? Can you give me the things, the actual things? It was yes, we have that. And that's really exciting because, definitely I have friends that have spent a lot of money on a mindset only thing, but it wasn't very clear from the marketing materials. And I did not want to get into that situation, and I didn't. And I'm very glad. Something I probably should have told you before we started recording, but I've been scared to promote the podcast. I don't know when I'll start doing that more seriously, but eventually. But I've been a little bit. But I have gotten at least 3 different people reach out to me and say that they loved the episode with you and that they felt really inspired. And I'm like, she's so good.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And they're all poets, which is exciting to me because I was sort of hoping I could infiltrate the poetry world and be you can have money. You don't have to be broke. So I was excited that they're listening to your episode and feeling seeing the artist and the business and all these different things, and they can have access to everything. They don't have to pigeonhole themselves.
People don't seem to realize that being good with words is a gift and skill. Yeah. And I think a lot of times the things that we're naturally good at, we don't realize that it's a serious advantage over other people who aren't good at it, because we're it's so easy. What are you talking about? But trust me, most people can't write.
Yeah, that has been the biggest gift I've ever kind of stumbled into, is realizing the things that I sort of take for granted in myself, and then somebody else holding up a mirror and going actually, this is special. I don't ask my other friends for this advice. I only ask you for this advice. Do something with this. My life got a lot better when I stopped thinking that everybody knew all of the information I knew and more. Like there was no way that I could ever know anything more than somebody else. That's ridiculous. But anyway, you want to briefly summarize the beginnings of the Freelance Writer's Guide?
We started the Freelance Writer's Guide in 2020 during the pandemic. Right when the pandemic started, there were these SBA disaster loans that you could apply for. And because I had just purchased a house right before the pandemic started, and I wasn't really sure like what was going to happen to my workload, like am I going to have any money at all? Like, will I still have my freelance copywriting clients? I applied for one of those loans and I received funding through that. One of the stipulations of that loan is that you have to spend it on your business. Well, then I didn't end up losing any clients. In fact, I was really busy with copywriting. I had more work to do than usual, actually. And I had been thinking for a while that I wanted to start some kind of business where I taught other people how to become freelance copywriters like me, because I was in a lot of Facebook groups and people were like always asking the same questions and then just like giving each other terrible advice. And like it was just like the blind leading the blind. And I was like, I know that I have a really good system for doing this through trial and error because I've been doing it for several years at that point. And I love like systematizing stuff. Like that's like one of my favorite things. So I decided to start my own coaching business and I hired an assistant named Lindsay, and I brought her on in the summer of 2020. And we started working on building up my social media, and we started working on a course, which became the Freelance Writer's Guide to the Galaxy. And things were pretty slow starting out. Originally, it wasn't even the Freelance Writer's Guide. That came later. We rebranded like a year into it. So at first it was just all under Colleen Welsh. I had dreams that I was going to be like an Amy Porterfield, Jenna Kutcher type business boss lady influencer, which isn't really me, I feel like. So I don't know what I was thinking, but I just thought that's what I had to do. So nothing was really like happening until February. I think it was February 2021 when I first went viral on TikTok. So the first course launch we had, I think, was in January 2021. And we sold like 4 courses, which was not going to pay for the assistant, let alone pay me anything. So after I went viral on TikTok, the next time I launched my course, I sold 44 of the courses. So I was like, okay, apparently TikTok is where it's at. So I got very into TikTok. I was uploading all the time. In 2021, I feel like it was way easier to get a bunch of views on TikTok. Like my TikTok blew up to, I think it's at like 130,000 followers right now. So it really blew up, and I had multiple videos that were getting like hundreds of thousands of views. That was very exciting. My email list was growing. We also had an Instagram, and then we started getting into building a YouTube channel. As I was saying earlier, I really thought I was going to be like this like Jenna Kutcher type influencer, business thought leader, and then like that's not me. And I think the whole fact that the Freelance Writer's Guide was like based on that idea, that's really like what made it go off the rails and led to burnout. I had a lot of success with it. I made a lot of money with it. Not like an insane amount of money, but it was definitely like paying my bills. And I was making the most money I've probably ever made in my life during like the heyday, but it wasn't sustainable because I really wasn't enjoying the work I was doing. I didn't really like making all that short form content was very overwhelming. I had coaching programs that involved 1 hour weekly Zoom calls with multiple students. So at like, I would have like 4 or 5, 6 of those calls every week, and I found them really draining. And just like answering all the questions. There's so many questions, so many DMs, like everybody wants stuff for free. It was really overwhelming. And I just had to take a step back from it. And once I started stepping back from it, the revenues started declining, and I was really getting ideas about different directions that I wanted to go in that weren't the freelance writer's guide, because it really was like a full-time job. I was doing that all the time. I had to hire out to help with my freelance copywriting clients because I didn't have enough time to do them. And I wasn't making enough time to work on music production, which is my real passion. And I was just like, I was so sick of talking about freelance copywriting. And then all this stuff with AI started to be in the news. And then AI really grosses me out. And that like really derailed my confidence. So yeah, the revenue just dropped to the point where I had to let my assistant go, which was really sad. And then I just told everyone, like, I'm quitting. I'm not doing this anymore. I looked into selling the business. Then I couldn't sell the business. And then I just like let it sit for a while. And then one day I just was like, you know what? I'm going to email this list again. I have like something I want to talk about. And I've slowly started to work on the freelance writer's guide, but just like in a much smaller, more manageable way. I felt guilty for abandoning that audience, especially the people who were in my course. And like we have monthly office hours. So like I meet these women, they're pretty much everyone's a woman in my course, let's be real. We meet like every month, and like I've gotten to know them, and I just felt really bad. It didn't feel right to just like completely walk away from it. So I'm just slowly incorporating it in, but I don't want it to become a full-time job again. I just want it to be like one of my many side hustles. Well, and that's where I am with it. So still working on it, but in a much, much smaller way.
To your credit, you didn't just like, I'm quitting, good luck. I mean, you had like an offboarding plan, or being thoughtful about the people that had purchased and that were still getting office hours.
Yeah, and now I'm in a weird in-between phase now, because I'm trying to pivot my YouTube channel, because my YouTube channel was all about freelance writing, and that's really like the videos that are growing my channel are those videos. But I want to make other types of YouTube videos. I don't ever want to make videos like that again. And maybe I should have just made a new channel and started from scratch. But then there were so many people that are like, I love your vlogs, do more vlogs. So I was like, I'll just stay on this channel, because I have no intention of ever like making videos about freelance copywriting again. So hopefully eventually the algorithm will just like get the memo that I have moved on, and people can stay subscribed if they want. And if not, that's also okay. No hard feelings.
Is it true that you started off having like a personal kind of beauty fashion blog like years and years and years ago before even copywriting? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a beauty and fashion lifestyle blog called Cuckoo for Cocoa. That was like my blogger blog. I was into that world. So that I started that in college, and even before I had that, I had LiveJournal. Like I have been putting stuff on the internet forever. But that kind of got me used to writing and building an audience. Like I just dipped my toe into it. It was not popular. It did not do well, but it gave me some indication of like how much work this stuff really is. And because I was part of like promoting yourself was like reading other blogs and then commenting. So I read like so many other blogs, and I feel like that was probably the best thing for me in eventually becoming a freelance blog writer.
I consumed so many blogs, and I would kind of start them and then I would delete them. I've had 1,000 blogs that I've then since deleted. And I really regret it now. I really wish I had just like poured myself into it. Did you want to have a lifestyle YouTube channel before, or were you already making sort of lifestyle YouTube videos before the Freelance Writer's Guide?
No, my only intention in making a YouTube channel was to promote my business. I did not intend for it to become anything else. But as time went on, I was like, this is my favorite thing about this business is making the YouTube videos.
I think that's amazing. Sometimes when I'm feeling nervous about things, as I always do, if I can justify it under the umbrella of a business, like having a podcast, then I can do it. It's not about me. It's about something outside of me, right? I know that you talked about it first being under your name, but I do like the suggestion for people who are nervous about starting businesses or freelancing. There is a little bit of power of giving something a name, a separate entity. Then you can sort of justify things that might otherwise be scary. Well, maybe I wouldn't like create a YouTube video for myself, but if it's to drive revenue and it's to build an audience for this business, then I guess I'll have to do it. I don't know. I just find that really interesting that through that path, then you like found out that you really you like making YouTube videos.
Well, nothing you learn is ever wasted. And I think it just goes to show like you don't have to have everything figured out. You'll just keep learning as you go. And you're not going to get to a point where it's not going to be like, oh, you're 30, so now you have everything figured out. Like all this stuff happened after I was 30.
No, don't tell me that. I would like to pretend that I can predict every future turn in my life and all the emotions I'll have. That's what I
wouldn't want to. That sounds like if there's no surprises, what's the point?
I logically agree, but emotionally I'm like, I would love if there was no surprises. I would love to know everything. Okay, so I have worked with a lot of health coaches that did one-on-one coaching. And I feel like part of that experience, watching what they went through, stopped me from ever seriously pursuing what I think is a really tempting route to go down of like course creation or teaching online. And I have gotten a lot of people that ask me how I started freelancing and how did you get into project management and how do you get clients. And I have all these like free Google Docs and folders, and I would send them to people and be like, here's how to use Upwork. I don't have enough time to like show you all the things, but here's the information. And I would just sort of hand it off. And then because I watched a lot of coaches in my life really struggle with lack of boundaries and burnout, I was just like, I can't, there's no way I can do that. And I feel like online courses and coaching is billed as this like panacea right now on the internet. Everybody should have them. Everybody is capable of having a course, which I fully believe, like 100%, you have something that you could teach people. And it is really cool to hear about people that have like unusual courses, like closet organization or like food prepping and stuff. I find that really cool that people are packaging their unique knowledge and giving it to other people. And I love that philosophically. But I don't think it's fair to act like there's no drawbacks to having an audience or the responsibility of teaching others. And you touched on it a little bit, but I would love to talk about that more. What are some of the surprising drawbacks of having a course and offering coaching?
The weight of the responsibility of having an audience was something I was not prepared for. I did not expect, and nobody ever talks about. And it's stressful. It's stressful. Like I kind of am a person who, I'm a bit of a commitment phobe.
Now you're responsible for like dozens to hundreds of people's careers.
Yes. Yeah. And I had no boundaries at first. Like I would answer every YouTube comment. I would get hundreds of comments and I would answer all of them. I would answer every single email. And most people that message you or leave a comment, they have no intention of purchasing anything on your website, which is fine. Like they don't have to. But, I was spending a lot of time giving advice to people who don't give a shit about me, and it's not going to help my business at all. So, yeah, I had no boundaries around that. And I was like, honestly, like the attention felt so good that I was kind of addicted to it, like the dopamine rush of having TikToks do really well and have people pay attention to me. But at the same time, it was like overwhelming, and my nervous system was like in such a heightened state all the time because people were just looking at me. Like I knew people were watching these videos, and you can look on the statistics on TikTok and it'll say like people have spent 800 hours watching this 30-second video. You're like, what the fuck? Like, how can that be? So there's all those people that just want everything from you for nothing, and they don't value you or what you do whatsoever. And then there's the actual people that you are working with that do deserve to have some expectations on how you're going to serve them, but also where do you draw the line? And you have your different programs and your different like pricing tiers, and man, it's a lot. Also, more with having a course than coaching is you cannot control the outcome that the person has with the course. I give all the information I possibly can. I am available for questions. I have a monthly Zoom meeting where I'll answer questions, go over portfolios, whatever people need. But if people don't do the work, it's not going to work for them. And that was something that was really, really hard for me to accept. I wanted everyone to finish my course and become a freelance copywriter, because if they didn't, I felt like I was a fraud and a liar. And it didn't help that so many people would like comment on my TikToks like, this is a scam, you're a con artist. I had all these like keywords that I had blocked on TikTok because I felt like maybe I was a con artist, maybe I was a scammer, even though that was never my intention. It made me feel not confident in what I was doing, and it made me feel like I wasn't helping people, even though that was really my only intention, was to help people. And coaching is a little bit different because you are holding their hand more and checking in with them, but still, like if you're not doing the work, then they're not going to have a result. Or if they end the coaching program and then they don't, like I would always give people like a game plan afterwards. Like these are like the 6 things you need to do next. Like these are the resources to do them. And if you want, like we can check it, we can have another coaching call in like 6 months or something. And people would just not do them. And there's nothing I can do about that.
It's interesting because when you're getting advice on how to market or sell anything, you are supposed to focus on the benefits and the outcome that the person's going to get, right? Focus on the transformation. So in health coaching, you don't focus on the fact that like, here are the workouts that you're going to do. You're going to have to wake up at 5 a.m. and, exercise for an hour. All of the messaging needs to be around the outcome they're going to get in the end. But it's tricky because also I think the number one way to get yourself into a sticky situation, and perhaps like a morally dubious situation, is to like guarantee an outcome. Like you should not say you're going to lose 20 pounds in 4 weeks, or you're going to make $50,000 in 2 months or whatever, which I've never seen any content from you that did that. And I think that when people are really critically thinking about what is and isn't a scam, that's probably a pretty good like red flag, right? Because I pay for training and people pay for education in all kinds of different ways, like from college to nonfiction books to courses to I paid for a lot of coaching and poetry and business. And all of those are different types of education. It's the promise that usually can be the thing that kind of like can make you pause and reflect on what you're about to invest in. But it's tricky. You have to be really careful with your messaging because ultimately you can't make the person do the thing. And it's also okay and a very real experience to think you want to be a freelance copywriter, and then you learn more about it and you're like, I don't want to do this. I used to think I wanted to be a social worker. And then you know what? I started to take classes in social work and I was like, this is not for me. This is not the thing I want to do it. But I wasn't like, the college didn't like scam me out of my social work endeavors. I learned more about myself.
Yeah, you wouldn't say that. Yeah, exactly. No. Even though how much more expensive is college than an online course. Yeah. Also, I mean, I went to college for 4 years and there was no promise of anything after that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think about this a lot, especially in the poetry world, because it's like, you can get your MFA, go back to school, and then that'll unlock the world of like publishing poetry and having a poetry book. And I remember going like, oh my God, is that where all the answers are? And then my brain said, why don't you just not do that? So I went and found a friend, kind of a friend, and was like, can I pay you to coach me? You have an MFA. Tell me what the secrets are. And so that was like, I mean, I don't know, $60,000 compared to like 75 to talk for an hour. And then that turned into like more. But still, if you look at all the money I paid her versus the MFA, it's just not even comparable. And I got to figure it out, because had I had that conversation and it turns out actually I didn't like writing poetry, that wasn't the game I wanted to be in, thank God I found out in a much smaller scale. What are some tips on people that are, maybe they already, let's assume they already have a course and they are feeling like their psychic energy is being drained. Obviously we talked about accepting the fact that all you can do is offer people tools. You can't make them do the thing, and you have to kind of divest yourself from their outcomes. Do you have any other advice for people that are running a course and they're feeling like this is just not, like I don't have a life anymore?
Well, you can get out of it. I like the good thing about having these online businesses is that there is a way to get out of it and you can sell it. So
That's true.
but that all depends on like how you have it set up. Like if you have it under your name and you're like really the face of it, it's going to be much harder to sell versus if it has a separate name, it's a separate entity from you. And even though mine was a separate entity from me, because I was in so much of the marketing material, just like my face, me talking and stuff, like that was going to be a problem when it came to the value of my business and whether I could sell it. But there are listing services out there. The one that I was talking to was Empire Flippers. And the first time I did evaluation with them, which was in fall 2022, they told me that they could list my business for like, I think it was like 99K. So like a good chunk of change. And if you're making at least, I want to say like at least 2,000 a month passively from your business, you can sell it using something like Empire Flippers, because people will buy these businesses that generate passive income as long as you have it set up that it could be passed along, which is where a book like The E-Myth Revisited is good. Right. To check out. If you're even thinking about starting some kind of coaching or like course business, read that book, because I would have done a lot of things differently if I had known that I would eventually be interested in selling my own business. But even if you don't think you're interested in that, I would still read that book, because you might be interested in it in a few years, because I don't think anyone is really prepared for the mental strain of being a course creator and a coach.
Thank you for calling out the E-Myth Revisited. I think even if you're creating something as a passion project or for fun or an experiment, if you can understand from the beginning the ways in which you might have an exit plan later, it will really help. And I also think that these online businesses, it's empowering the ones that are kind of like lifestyle businesses and you're getting passive income. But I also have witnessed a lot of people whose personality isn't shaped by the businesses they create. So in the beginning, they take their personality and they put it in their YouTube videos or their newsletters, and like it's who they are out on into the world. And then the world starts coming back, and then you get the data, and then you find out like, when I really play up this quirk, people really respond to it, and people's personality changes. I mean, there's like crazy examples where we see, kind of normal authors and things, and then suddenly they become like Twitter caricatures of themselves. You're like, how does that happen? It's because you get all this data back. So anyway, that's like a whole nother conversation, but I think something to think about is that even if you can't imagine a reason why you wouldn't want to do this in the future, maybe just assume that there might be. And if you can kind of build it, like not using your name, like creating a brand around it, it'll give you more options in the future. And I'm happy you brought that up. I don't think people are talking about this enough. I don't know if you remember, like, in those early blogging days, but I would listen to when podcasts started to get successful, and they would interview bloggers that, like, turned their fashion blog into these, like, huge multi-million-dollar businesses. The story was always, I didn't start this with this idea. I had no idea what was going to happen. I just, like, one day, like, woke up and I had all these subscribers and I got really famous and rich. And I think that was probably true for them because it was, like, the beginning of fashion blogging. But I think that maybe I would imagine anybody that's, like, started a blog or a newsletter or a podcast or a YouTube channel, at least within the last 5 years, like, do you think that like, certainly can't be true? Like, people have to, at least a part of them has to know in the back of their mind that there could be a possibility for monetization.
I think people do have it in the back of their mind, but I think the reality is so different than what they think it's going to be like. And most people don't really think through what it will be like being a full-time influencer or being a full-time coach, or even, like, you know, I used to want to be like a rock star. That was, like, my main career aspiration. And as time has gone on and I've gotten older, I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, there's no way I want to do that. I don't want to go on tour. That sounds terrible. So part of it is, like, thinking through, I guess there's knowing what huge success in this field looks like, which you can get from podcast interviews of people who are successful in the field. There's thinking through you doing that. And there's also just knowing yourself, because I feel like when I started the Freelance Writer's Guide, I didn't know myself well enough to be able to make the right decisions for myself and my business all the time. I was just doing what I thought I was supposed to do. And that is kind of, like, what led me to trouble, which is fine. Also, like, you don't need to know yourself to start doing these things. Like, I messed up a lot. I got really burned out. I'm doing other stuff now. I feel really good. Like, it's okay. I'm glad I did that. So, like, I don't want that to stop anyone from doing things that they want to try doing. We make mistakes, and it's okay. And we learn from them, and you probably won't die. So that's all good news.
Yes, I agree completely. Definitely on the side of doing more things versus not doing things. But also, while you're doing all those things, get information from a variety of sources, because it's helpful, especially if it's, you know, like, if you're, like, a woman that is interested in 20 different hobbies and you love, like, the freedom of picking the project for the day, then the person to get advice from might not be the, like, male optimizer who loves to hyperfixate on something for 10 years of their life. Like, pick your information sources correctly.
Absolutely. That's when I learned about human design, that explained so much of why I was struggling, because a lot of people who have, well, I just want to say what human design is for people who don't know what it is. It's like astrology, kind of, but, like, different.
Yes.
It feels more scientific for some reason, although it's obviously not. But I still believe in it. And most people who do courses and coaching, people who are naturally gravitate towards that and are gifted at it, tend to be projectors. And I'm a manifesting generator. So right there, that's why all the stuff that I was learning from Amy Porterfield and Jenna Kutcher, which worked for them, they're probably projectors. Lacey Phillips is a projector. I was learning from them, and I was like, all right, I'll do this too. And then I was getting burned out where they would thrive. So I was like, well, what's wrong with me? But it's just because I have a completely different personality type and operate on a completely different wavelength. You are so right about having a wide variety of sources of advice. And also, just to bring TBM back into it, to be magnetic, like how they always say, like, the things you want to manifest, you need to unblock, expand, and do aligned actions. expanding is really important. So make sure you're like consuming a lot of content of people who are doing the things that you are thinking about maybe doing, who are successful at it, and like the behind the scenes stuff, like how it really works, how they really feel about it, not just like a day in my life. Like you need to get like a podcast interview is always a good place to get the real details about what it's really like to be them.
I have, oh my gosh. So yes to that, I have two thoughts. One is another good way is like work for somebody. Either work for somebody and get paid or work for somebody for free, which I am a fan of, but there's a lot of nuance. And I think I might write a blog post about this. But definitely if you can work for people, be in the orbit of people, like the behind the scenes, that's going to be extremely helpful. And then my caveat to that is be careful who you work for, because I have had the experience of working for some people that were really burnt out business owners, really depressed business owners, people that really had like built up a prison of their own making. And so that's almost been like, so here I'm expanded at the idea of how much money people can make and how a business works. And then I also have practical tools, but then I have all this like fear and trepidation of having something and then like not being able to navigate out of it. So I think part of the reason I was so excited to talk to you is like, I'm excited when people are talking about the ways to navigate out of it and the ways that you can restructure something. There, I can't remember her name, but there's another podcaster who offered coaching, and I think a totally different, she might have been like like hippie healing. I'm not sure what she was doing, but what was interesting was she walked her service back. Like she was very successful and she walked it back because it was she didn't want to do it anymore. And so now she offers her like services in a different way. There's Katie Bowman, who is a biomechanist, natural movement author and scientist. And she got really popular online. She was kind of adjacent to the paleo movement, and podcasts and books. And she's so talented. She's fantastic. But she was very visible online and doing a lot of online courses. And then a couple of years ago, she sent out a newsletter and said, my whole work is about moving more, and I'm on the computer all the time. So I'm actually going to go back to in-person classes, which is so different from everything we talk about, which is like scale, take yourself out of the business, make a productized service. And you can actually like walk that back. You can go back to the beginning part if that's what feels better to you.
You don't have to continue to optimize, because that can be a prison. Like my dad, he won't like accept jobs above a certain level because he likes to, he's a sales engineer and he likes to be out in the field with the clients. He likes to travel. He likes to solve problems. That's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to like manage a bunch of sales engineers. He did it for a little bit. He was like, I hate this. And then he just like walked his career back a little bit and just went back to being a sales engineer. And he could have made a lot more money. He chose not to because he's more happy doing what he does. Yeah. And I was just reading Berry Gordy's memoir. Berry Gordy is the founder of Motown. And when he started Motown, he was very involved with the management of the artists, like finding the artists, managing them. He was very involved in the songwriting and production, very hands-on at the beginning. But by the time he sold the business, like 99% of what he was doing was just like business stuff. Like he was not involved in the music at all. And I think, I don't want to say like that was, I mean, he did end up having to sell the business because it wasn't making money anymore. So maybe that was like part of the reason why it declined, but it is kind of like something to think about. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but like, but he loved music so much and he wasn't making music at all by the time he sold the business. So it's like he just optimized himself out of the equation.
I was speaking with a poet and publisher and writer and all around like amazing person named Rob McLennan the other day. And we were talking about writing all the time if you want to be a good writer, and this idea of like, well, if you get really, really good at writing, all that you get is like the opportunity to do more writing. You're just going to do more of the thing that you're doing. So if you right now are thinking like, I'm going to get really, really good at YouTube, like then once you get really, really good at YouTube, you just get to do more YouTube, right? So
Exactly.
yeah. So think about the thing that you want to get really, really good at. And if it's not the thing that you want to be doing a lot of your time on, like if you want to be really good at managing people, then you should be managing people all the time. But if you don't want to manage people all the time, maybe that's not the thing that you like spend all of your time learning how to do. Something to think about, because the reward is like you just do that for the rest of your life forever. That's what you get when you become successful at something. You just do it more.
Yeah. And I get a lot of people who like tell me that they want to get into freelance copywriting because they actually want to write fiction. And my advice to people who say that is maybe don't do that, because if you are spending your whole day writing for clients, like, are you really going to want to write for yourself afterwards? Maybe not. And that was actually the case for me. I did want to write fiction, and now I'm like, maybe when I'm like 60, I'll be ready to like write a book for fun.
Yeah, Rob and I talked about that as well too, because he had this insight when he was 20 of like, well, I just knew that if I wrote all the time, then probably opportunities would come about so I could do more of it. And I was like, well, that's so interesting, because when I was 20, I was like, there's no way I'll ever make any money from writing. I won't even devote time to the creative aspect of writing, because it'll never happen. And then we were talking about the importance of like having like the belief or the North Star that anything that you put 10 years into is going to work. And so now that I have had experiences in the actual literary community, I do wish I could go back to my 20-year-old self and be like, listen, you spend a decade doing anything, you will make it work. Like, it might not be the perfect romantic notion of what a fiction writer will be, but there's just no way after 10 years, you'll probably be able to figure something out, some way to earn an income. So if you're not interested in copywriting or content writing, and you really do think it's going to be like the thing, like there's a better bridge to get you to fiction writing than copywriting. I don't know what, maybe research is probably better. There's other bridges that you could go to get to that route. I like copywriting. It's interesting because I would work under marketing directors and then feel really envious of them and be like, God, I'll never be a marketing director. I'll never get to do the kind of thing that they're doing, because you have to have so much confidence. It's only the confident, like every marketing director I've ever worked with is so cocky and they like fight for their ideas. And I just thought that it would never be me. And in the last like 6 months through copywriting in a way, I was like, oh, you have to do that, because it's not even about the writing so much. It's about justifying the writing and like articulating the reasons behind the writing. Like that to me is almost, not so much with content, but with copy, that's like 80% of the job is explaining why the copy works, and you have to be able to back it up. You can't expect the client to know that the work is good. It's actually your job to tell them it's good. Anyway.
It is, yes. Because if they knew what good copy was, they wouldn't have had to hire you.
That took me a really long time to understand. I guess it's like I had like a high school mentality or something. Like the teacher, I was always waiting for the teacher to give me an A, and then a big shift happened when I went, oh, they don't know. They don't know. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Yeah. Okay. So I have been, of course, opening up every freelance writer guide email, and I'm excited. And like, you put out a survey asking people what they wanted, and there's changes happening, and it looks from the outside that there's a much more joyful approach for you. So could you speak to that, and then maybe talk about some of the changes? And I don't know, like, how do you feel about where the freelance writer's guide is going?
At this point, like, the freelance writer's guide isn't really like for me. It's for other people. Like, I don't personally enjoy making courses and coaching. Like, it's like, I don't enjoy doing the work, but I do like helping people, and I like the people who are like in my audience, and I know that I can help them. And that's why I was like, I just totally outsourced like basically the whole strategy for the rest of the year to my audience. Like, what do you want? And I'll figure out a way to do it in a way that like is going to fit into my life and I feel good about it. And I got some really great responses back. And my kind of feeling about the freelance writer's guide is I'm just going to like do it until it dies. And not like, I think there was a bit of an ego thing in that I wanted to walk away from it before the business failed because I felt like that was the direction it was going in. I just wasn't making any money anymore. It was losing money actually because I pay for, you know, like the course hosting, the website hosting. There's so many things to pay for. Plus I had an assistant. So it was losing money like all last year. And it wasn't losing money, but it wasn't making like any significant amount of money. And like the freelance copywriting I was doing was sometimes funding the freelance writer's guide. So there was like an ego thing and that I wanted to leave before it failed. But now I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be the captain of a sinking ship and I'm just going to go down with the ship. And that feels better to me.
You know,
and it might not sink also. But
I'm curious to see if you having more of an authentic, detached feeling like results in something better. And also I was thinking about audience selection a little bit. So like the audience that's right for you, that responds to you, that wants to hear about your music production and your copywriting, like if that's going to change the feel of everything, if it can become like a restorative or interesting sort of project for you again, because the whole approach and the whole feeling will just be a little bit more, I don't know, authentic or looser or more free. I'm curious to see what kind of bubbles up from that.
I am also curious to see what happens with that. But the issue is that there is no long-term plan for bringing in new audience members because I stopped making TikToks and I was never doing the Instagram. My assistant handled Instagram completely. So now there's no activity on social media and I'm also not making YouTube videos about it anymore. So once the pivot is complete in the eyes of the YouTube algorithm and people stop seeing the videos about freelance copywriting, which is where I am getting new audience members from currently, then that'll probably be the end of the freelance writer's guide. It will just naturally die. It will just reach the end of its life. And I'm not saying I'm never going to post on TikTok or post on Instagram again. It's just like not really my plan at this point to do that. So that's what I mean when I say I'm just going to ride the sinking ship down.
It'll be like
I'll just keep making stuff and eventually like no one will care anymore. And then I'll be able to walk away and feel like I saw that to completion.
That makes sense. And then there will be this library that'll exist, and I don't know. Lucky to the people that were able to get access when it was available. It'll be okay. There's always new course create. I'm like feeling sad for the people that don't get to join, like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years or whatever, that don't get to join. They'll be fine. There will be other courses that they can join. And other people
they won't even know about the freelance writer's guide. There will be no way for them to know about it. So do you know what I mean? It won't matter.
But I feel that, but like they could have had, like they don't even, I mean, they'll never know, but I'll know about this invisible stranger that could have had this like really nice, fun, well-created course. And then they go to somebody else. Maybe that course sucks. They'll be fine. I have a friend that has a company, and at its peak, it was like extremely, extremely successful. And it has slowly died over the last, I would say, like 8 years. They didn't make a lot of the pivots that they should have made. They didn't have the capacity to do it. They didn't want to do it. We like sort of pretend like things are always happening to us. But it can be very empowering to go, actually, no, I'm making a choice to not optimize, to not scale, to not grow in this tiny aspect. But it's interesting.
Yeah, and sometimes not making a choice is also a choice.
It is a choice. Yes. That is a really good point. I think it's better if you make it the choice and you own it versus looking back and going like, I don't know how the last 10 years happened to me, which I have done. It's not a good idea. But it's interesting watching her business. Essentially, they're like, well, we still get orders, we get some organic traffic, and we'll take care of it. But I'm not really, the cost of getting it ready to sell would like take away like 3 years of their life with their kids and other programs that they have. And it's just not worth it to them. It's an interesting emotional journey, however, for her, because she feels like kind of connected to it. Not an easy choice that you're making.
Yeah, but then it's like giving your baby to someone else that you like raised for like years. Like that would be really hard. I don't think, I think I was lying to myself when I thought that I could do that. Like it would have just felt really bad. But I don't know. I was so burned out that I just kind of was like backed into a corner and I didn't really know what to do.
Well, I think you also kind of gave yourself permission, which is nice because sometimes we forget that we could do something else. We could do something crazy. We could there's no reason that you have to keep on the hamster wheel.
And I also kind of think of like the freelance writer's guide is like my bridge job in like the TBM type of language. It's like I do make money from it, obviously, and it doesn't like completely pay my bills, but like it is like a little bit coming in, and as long as I can make things that people are interested in purchasing, like why not? It's actually a lot easier and more satisfying for me to do that than to get a job. Like, because I do need to make money because I'm not making enough money to live off of as a YouTuber and a music producer at this point. And that's okay. It's okay to lean on this for money. And it's not like, I don't know, it's okay to make money from it and talk about it, right?
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, obviously, and it's a good product. Like you built a good product and a good service. I don't think there's any reason not to pursue it. I guess I'm just thinking about like all of the annoying people on the internet that like to be angry at other people for their success. But you know what? Speaking of that, my friend with her jewelry business, she like buys jewelry and sells jewelry. She, for like many years, has gotten people being like, you're scamming people, you're taking money away from them. And it's like kind of one of the most cut and dry businesses that exists. But there's always going to be somebody, especially if maybe they're not living a life that they feel happy with, they're not satisfied with their job, they're not satisfied with their financial goals, that's going to want to believe that other people's success is like a trick or is like not true. They're really looking for that. And I don't think that just happens in like the online course, digital business. Oh my God, I've been freelancing doing grunt, like especially in the beginning, I was like doing grunt work, like data entry, survey compiling, customer service, like hard work. And people would tell me like, oh, you're doing that from home? Like that's not real. That's not a real job. There's always going to be opinions that they're not going to understand. It's going to look too good compared to what they have, and they're going to find a way to poke a hole. But like, you've made a good service. You've made a good product.
Yeah, you're totally right. Anything that anyone leaves, any comment, email, DM, anything that anyone says to you, whether it's good or bad, is a projection of what's going on with them, and it has nothing to do with you.
Do you think that you'll ever, or can you imagine right now ever creating another course? Like, are you going to make a music production Skillshare, or I don't know if Skillshare is still a thing, or I don't know, like anything else? Like now that you kind of know the process for course and coach creation, can you imagine yourself being a different kind of course creator, teacher, owner?
I mean, never say never, but knowing all the work that goes into it, probably not.
I think that's fair.
Unless I could like do it based on my whatever YouTube audience develops after my niche pivot really goes into effect. If it was something that was like natural with that, like the only thing I could really think of at this time would be like how to organize your life as a manifesting generator. How to organize my life has been like at the core of my struggles for years and years and years, basically my whole life. And you know, when I was like in school, like especially like in high school, I did so many like different things. It was really energizing for me. Like I was in band, I was like in the drama club, I was in art class, I took Latin, I was in like AP English. I did all this stuff that I was really interested in, and it was really energizing for me. And that kind of started to fall off in college. I didn't like keep any of my hobbies because my hobby became drinking. And then like in my 20s, I just got a job, and then I really like lost all my hobbies, and then I was like not thriving. And once I became a freelancer, I mean, the first year of freelancing was like all I did was work, because I really had to whole ass that to get that off the ground. I couldn't half ass it. But then after a while, I was making more money and I didn't have to work as much to make a living. So I had more time, and I was able to start like bringing stuff in. And then I was like, well, now I love all these things. How can I do them all at once? And how, like, taking care of myself and taking care of my house, maintaining relationships. How do you live? Like, how do you balance all of that? And I think that is such a good question. And I'm still trying to figure it out, but I feel like I've really made progress. Like right now, Megan, I'm like recording this podcast with you, obviously, but I have my YouTube channel. I'm working on the Freelance Writer's Guide. I have freelance copywriting clients. I am preparing for a sketch show next week. So I'm memorizing all my lines, getting the props and the costumes ready. I am producing an album for an artist based out of the UK. I am taking a course on mixing and mastering. And I am also like hanging out with all my friends and keeping in touch with my family. I have a dog. I'm taking care of my house, which I clean every week from top to bottom. Like I am getting it all done. And as someone who like would just lay on the couch all weekend and not know what to do because I would be so overwhelmed with all the possibilities, I've really made a lot of progress in organizing my life and getting it all done. And I feel like that if I had another course in me, it would be on that.
I would buy that course. I need that course. I just wrote down like my big block that I'm working on. I was journaling about it yesterday. What is the big thing holding me back right now? And it is there's not enough time, and writing, like inspired, true, creative writing for clients or myself takes a ton of time.
Yeah. And you know, the old adage is Beyonce has the same 24 hours in a day that you have. And she also has
a lot of assistance.
Yeah, she has a lot of help. But
maybe
it is possible.
And maybe that's part of the unblock too, when it's like maybe you could get some help. Like you could ask somebody for help.
Get some help.
Yeah. Yeah. I got food poisoning yesterday, so I couldn't go to Mother's Day. I'm fine. But I couldn't go to Mother's Day like family stuff or whatever with my aunt and cousins. And I was like, for Mother's Day, can you just take my child from me? Because I don't have, so my son doesn't have grandparents. I don't have a lot of childcare, but he's in school, which is helpful. But I was like, that's what I want for Mother's Day. Can you take him? And then I was like, just so I could sleep and feel kind of sick. And then when I was journaling last night, I was like, okay, you got to get your stuff together, because getting food poisoning and then having like 4 hours where you can sleep and be alone should not be like the highlight of your week. You're going to have to figure some stuff out.
Yeah, and that's like a source of imposter syndrome for me. Is like, well, I can't make that course because I don't have children. So people who have children have like a whole other level of complexity that I don't understand and will perhaps never understand. But I guess there's plenty of people that don't have kids.
But but you're not making the course for the people that potentially that have like the children. Maybe. I have to tell you, I mean, I know we have to stop shitting off of like male optimizers. I'm thinking of the same person too, who I respect so much, person I will not name. But like I would go to you for time management advice before I would go to certain other time management gurus on the internet for sure. My goodness, I love talking to you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy.
You're welcome. This was wonderful. I love talking to you also.